Hello everyone, my name is Seth, and today I'm going to give you my review of Chapter 23 of The Mandalorian. First off, if you have not seen my reviews of the other episodes of The Mandalorian, go back on my channel, check them out, so you can get a full understanding of kind of where I'm at in my thought process so far this season. But I will go ahead and say, just real quickly so you can get caught up, I have really been enjoying this season of The Mandalorian. There's been some ups and downs. I did not like the previous episode, but I absolutely liked this episode. This was probably my favorite of the season so far. But before I go any farther, go ahead and hit the like button, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you can receive notifications for an upload my next video. So yeah, I think this episode got us back on track. Like I mentioned in the last video, I think the last couple of episodes for Season 1 and Season 2 have both been really good. And so I was really hoping that would be the case here for Season 3, and so far, that is the case. I think they got back on track after the last episode with Jack Black and Lizzo and kind of, that side quest with the droids. And I absolutely think that this is what The Mandalorian can be when it's firing on all cylinders. The action is great. It furthers the story. There's great interaction between the characters. There's some good, heartfelt moments. There's some good drama. And there's some good laughs. Rick Famuyiwa was the one who directed this episode. I've loved the other episodes he's directed, and this was awesome. Like, this was a really good episode of The Mandalorian. He did a great job directing this. Right from the beginning of the episode, it feels like we're really starting to move the story along. We catch up with Elia Kane, and she starts talking to Moff Gideon, and that just really makes me realize even more how much we should have been checking in with him throughout the season. I think that's one kind of connecting thread that could have been in all of the episodes, seeing kind of some of the things that happened off screen with him. Giancarlo Esposito is so good. He's magnetic. Like, he brings such a gravitas to this character, into the story, and every time he's on screen, it's just magic. Like, he is awesome. And so I really wish we'd gotten to see more of him throughout the season. Again, that's more of a overall season thing instead of this episode. I'm so glad we got to see as much of him as we did in this episode. We see him walking through with the Imperials on each side of him with the red walls, and you see him walk by maybe some cloning tanks, something like that. Has that council meeting with all of the other former Imperials, I guess I would say. And these former Imperial warlords are a lot more connected than the New Republic might would think. They are planning together. They have this whole council Zoom call, like, this is a really good way of kind of bridging this era and like right after Return of the Jedi to the sequel trilogy, because it shows how the First Order is able to come about, because they really never 100% went away. They did such a great job so far in this season, and especially in this episode, really starting to kind of bridge the gap between those two eras. And I really enjoyed it. There you get to see General Hux's dad. He's one of the ones that they talk to. And then, of course, the big thing is that they mention Grand Admiral Thrawn and how he's been missing from these meetings. And they have Pelion there, his right-hand man right out of the books. He looks great. That seems like great casting to me. I mean, the guy looks and sounds exactly like I imagine. It's just so cool to see all of this with Grand Admiral Thrawn really getting to be brought into live action now. I'm really starting to think now, especially with them having Thrawn, at least for a little bit, in the Ahsoka trailer. And then they also released some additional footage of Thrawn at Star Wars Celebration. So I really think that we might get to see Grand Admiral Thrawn in the finale of this season of The Mandalorian. I think that would be great. And kind of jumping forward to later in the episode, just the way that Gideon talks about himself with his new Beskar armor and everything, and it really seems like we might end up seeing a confrontation between Gideon and Thrawn. And I think that would be awesome. So going back to the Mandalorians, this really continues to just show the division and kind of the hatred between the two groups of the Mandalorians. And that's kind of a theme I feel like they've been showcasing all season long. And I mean, they get to camp and they basically make two separate camps, one with helmets, one without helmets. And it's just interesting to see them eventually, start to warm up to each other, and then they all kind of start and then whenever they need a boarding party to go down to Mandalore, then they both start charming in from both sides, and that's just, it's cool to see a beginning of unity between the Mandalorians. Also there, Navarro Grief Cargo gives Din and Grogu what he calls IG-12, which is basically the skeleton of IG-11, just where Grogu can sit in the chest and pilot. And I wasn't sure what I thought about that at first. I was like, oh, really? I don't know. I don't know if that works. He has his little pod. That works fine. Why do we need this? Well, I've been thinking about it, and I think it really can help make Grogu more of a active participant in the action and in the series. He has the yes and no button, which is really funny. And they use it very well there on Mandalore when those two get into a fight over Mandalorian chess. When they land on Mandalore and they meet this other group of survivors that have been there and living there on Mandalore, they have a really good discussion and a really good emotional moment with Bo-Katan. And they are focusing a whole lot more on Bo-Katan than I really thought they would this season. And I don't mind that at all. Katie Sackhoff is great. She's always great. I love her portrayal of this character, both in animation and live action. And even though it's a little bit jarring to see so much focus on her, I love that we are getting to focus on her. She feels guilty and selfish for surrendering, and because of that, she feels responsible for the bombing of Mandalore, and she wonders if she's able to hold everybody together and like what the Darksaber means and everything like that. But then Den has a really good moment. Says, listen, I'm following you because of your character, not because of any kind of sword or any kind of rules or anything like that. And I think that was a really good moment between those two. Now here we get to talk about the action. I think I've mentioned it in really just about every episode, but they've absolutely nailed the action in this season so far. And this episode is no different. I love that shot of the Imperials flying through to the Great Forge, and that whole fight scene there between the Mandalorians and the Imperials, and then them chasing them back, and it goes from this kind of rocky terrain to more built up and Imperial. That was just really cool to see. And now I have to mention, Din gets captured by Moff Gideon, and I'm excited to see what they do with that. At this point now, Grogu's without him, and now it's kind of like it's his job to save Din instead of the other way around. And I think that's very interesting. And I cannot talk about this without mentioning Paz Vizsla's sacrifice. That was really well done. I think it was properly emotional, and it was also properly just like really cool. He was fighting so hard to make sure that the Mandalorians could get out safe that he overheated his blaster, and it was like red hot, and then he was still fighting with his bare hands, and he took out all of those Imperials. That was so cool. And then the Praetorian Guards come in, and I think that shows just how formidable they're going to be in this last episode. But I feel like he had a fitting end for a warrior like himself. And I'm glad it was his choice and he was sacrificing himself to save the other Mandalorians. That was really cool and it was really well done. And so a couple of negatives I do have about this episode is, I guess, the way the story kind of flows a little bit. There's a couple of points that stick out to me, and it's just, I don't know, it doesn't work for me as far as a narrative transition, getting them from point A to point B. With them landing on Mandalore and then the survivors just kind of showing up out of nowhere, I don't know about that. I don't think that was necessarily 100% successful, but wasn't too bad, I guess. And then another point kind of like that is they're all going to the Great Forge and this giant monster just pops up out of the ground and then they run and then they're just kind of there at the Great Forge and that's it. That didn't 100% work for me, but again, that is just a small thing in this episode that I didn't like. I really enjoyed just about the rest of the episode. It was really good. And that makes me really hopeful for the finale that they'll absolutely nail it. And another thing I want to bring up is that, do we trust the armorer? Because I don't know if I do. I haven't really got a good vibe from her since like the beginning of the show. It was like halfway through the first season. I was like, I don't know about her. And I've kind of felt that all the way through. And, it just seems a little convenient. She was telling her group that, oh, no, we can't go to Mandalore. It's poison. Don't even worry about it. Like, forget it. We're just going to hide out. It's poison. Don't even go there. But then she has Bo, and she kind of tasks her with gathering the Mandalorians and uniting them. And of course, the armorer does go for a little bit, but she does send a group down to the surface. And then conveniently, the Mandalorian's like, oh, hey, there's injured. I got this. Let me just get out of here real quick. Right before the ambush. I don't know. Something seems a little fishy there for me. I don't necessarily trust the armorer, but again, we'll see. And of course, another connection. Maybe it's superficial, maybe it's not. Moff Gideon's armor, his helmet had horns, hers had horns, and really kind of the last time we saw that was some of the Mandalorians who were loyal to Darth Maul. And so, I don't know. Maybe that has something to do with it. So that's it for me. That's my thoughts on Chapter 23 of The Mandalorian. I really enjoyed it. I'm so glad that they got back on track and delivered a really good episode. And that makes me super hopeful for the finale. I really hope they'll nail it. They nailed this episode. So I'm super excited. And I will bring you a review of the last episode and kind of an overview of the season as soon as I can. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Go ahead and hit the like button, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you can receive notifications when I upload my next video. And I'll see you next time.